We're ready to begin the reassembly of this watch. This is the AS 1187-1194 movement in our Andre Bouchard watch. I've got everything cleaned and everything like we saw in the last video, so now we're ready to start the reassembly. The first thing we're going to do is assemble the mainspring barrel, and I have a brand new mainspring here for it. Okay, we're going to take the barrel, and the mainspring comes in this metal washer that keeps it compressed so that we don't need to use a mainspring winder. And the way this works is real simple. We set it on top of the mainspring barrel so that the wound up mainspring is centered over it. This wound up mainspring will be slightly smaller in diameter than the barrel. You can see there I've got it sitting on it now. We'll flip it back over, and it's real simple. All we got to do is just push it down with our fingers. And one thing to pay attention to too is make sure that you've got the mainspring positioned the right direction so that it winds the correct direction. Because if you put it in backwards, you're going to pull it back out and then use a mainspring winder to get it back in. So we got it in. We're just going to push it down with our fingers, making sure that all the entire spring goes in at the same time so that so it's all pushed down evenly. All right, I had to use a screwdriver to kind of push down around it to get all the coils pushed in because you want it all in there evenly. Once we've got that in there, the next thing we need to do is install the arbor in the mainspring barrel. I'm just double checking here to make sure that everything's pushed down evenly. Looks like it's not quite. It looks like one side was a little higher than the other. To insert the arbor into the barrel, I've put it into a pen vise. Now there's two ends to the arbor. One end of it has a screw hole in it, which you can see here, and the other end does not. The one that has the screw hole needs to be the one that sticks out of the pen vise because it has to go into the barrel first. So here's our barrel, and the arbor needs to go into the middle of the coil. And you have to kind of finagle it in there because the coil is a little bit smaller than the arbor. So it's going to take a little bit of wiggling and turning and getting it stuck in there correctly. And I'm going to do that off camera because it's hard for me to hold it under the camera and do that. There's always kind of a risk you'll pull the spring out while you're doing this if you're not careful. Okay, I've got it in. Now you'll notice that the end with the screw hole then sticks out through the bottom of the barrel when this is properly set. Let's see if we can get a good view of this. And you can see it's stuck into the middle of the spring. If we turn the pen vise clockwise, it starts to wind the spring because it'll catch the... Alright, the arbor is inserted into the barrel correctly. You can see the end with the screw hole sticks out through the bottom of the barrel. This will actually be the top of the barrel when it's inserted into the movement because the side with the cover of the barrel goes down in the movement. And if you turn the pen vise counterclockwise, it will catch the arbor will catch the spring and start winding it, so you don't want to do that too much, but you want to make sure it catches the spring. And then we need to take the pen vise off, being careful not to extract the arbor and the spring from the barrel at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen the pen vise here, carefully turning it to loosen it. And there we go. There's our barrel with the arbor inserted. Now it's time to put the cover on it. And to do that, we'll put it into the barrel cover closing tool here. And we need to get the cover for the barrel. Here's the barrel cover. If you look at it, one side is different than the other. This side here, you can see there's a little bit of a ridge that sticks down around the edge of it and also around the hole in the middle. The other side of the barrel cover is smooth and doesn't have those ridges. This is the side that needs to go up. The side with the ridges sticking down needs to go down on the barrel. And so we just drop this down onto the top of the barrel. You need to make sure that the arbor is perfectly flat because it's not looking like it wants to go down all the way. Oh yeah, I guess it's fine. Then you put the cover over the barrel closing tool and just push down with your fingers. Oh, there it is. I heard it snap. Double check it and make sure it looks like it's evenly closed and everything, and it looks like it is. So that was easy. Okay, now we're ready to put this into the movement. The barrel goes into the big hole here on the movement, and as I said, the side with the screw hole is what goes up. So we just drop it in there. There. And then take the barrel bridge. I need to check because I think the screw that holds in the stem has to go in underneath the barrel bridge. I can't remember on this movement how that works. So before I screw that down, I'm going to take a look at my notes and see how that went. Alright, the screw does go in under the barrel bridge, so we're going to go ahead and insert it, and it goes into this hole right here next to where the stem goes in. And we just drop it in. This doesn't screw into the base plate. The hole it goes in and the base plate is smooth. There's no screw threads. And that's because this is actually going to screw into the detent lever, which will go on the other side of the movement when we assemble the keyless works. So now that that's in place, we can put the barrel bridge back on top of it. And you can see that screw is going to stick up through a hole in the barrel bridge. The barrel bridge is held on by 3 screws, and I've inserted those and tightened them up. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in the pallet fork and pallet bridge. I've got the pallet fork inserted. Now you want to make sure when you drop this in that the lower spindle goes into the jewel that it drops into, and that the arm goes through the middle of the 2 banking pins. And now we're ready to put the bridge over the top of it that holds the top spindle. Okay, you can see I have the pallet fork bridge installed, and this one's kind of unique because of the way it's set up. Most of them have the jewel in the middle of the bridge and then a screw on each side to hold it down. This one actually has the jewel on an end of the bridge, and then there's 2 pins that stick up from the bottom of the movement base plate that the bridge goes over for alignment, and then 1 single screw in the middle, which I've not yet inserted, that actually holds it in place. Now when you put this on, you need to make sure that not only are the pins and the screw hole aligned, but the spindle from the top of the pallet fork also needs to be properly seated in the jewel, because if you push it down onto the pallet fork when the spindle is not perfectly aligned with the jewel hole, you'll bend or break the spindle. So that's very important. Now I've got this properly aligned. I'm going to go ahead and put that screw in there, and then I'm going to put in the escape wheel. Now one thing I did here before I put the pallet fork in that I forgot to mention was I put a tiny little drop of Mobius 9415 oil on the tip of each of the pallet stones. And the tip is the angled part at the very tip of them is where you put that. And that helps smooth the movement of the escape wheel across those ends of the stones while the escapement is running. We're going to put a little bit of that oil on the escape wheel teeth too, and I'll show you that in just a second here. The escape wheel's in now too. I put a little drop of the 9415. I put it on the very ends of each tooth that I lubricated. Every 4th tooth was lubricated on the very, very tip of the tooth. And what will happen is when the escapement is running, the escape wheel will turn and the pallet fork will contact each tooth, and that'll spread that lubricant equally around all of them then, because every tooth needs a little bit of lubricant. But the amount is so tiny that you can't really measure it out for one at a time. So you just put it on every 4th, and each of those gets a little bit too much, but it'll get spread around equally to all of them as the escapement runs when you first start it up. So now we're ready to put in the rest of the gears for the powertrain. I placed the center wheel in next. Now this movement's a little unusual because normally you put in the escape wheel, then the 4th wheel, then the 3rd wheel, then the center wheel. This one you put in the center wheel first, and then there's a bridge that holds the center wheel in place. Then you put in the 3rd wheel and the 4th wheel. So we've got the center wheel in place. I'm going to put the bridge on next. I've got the center wheel bridge installed. It's held in place by 2 screws, and the center wheel spindle goes through this bearing right here, which is a non-jeweled bearing. I put a little tiny drop of HP 1300 on there to lubricate that. Now you notice that the spindle for the center wheel is hollow, and that's because the 4th wheel spindle will stick through that in order to go through the other side of the movement to carry the second hand. The 3rd wheel is going to go into this hole right here. You probably can't see it on the video, but there's a jewel visible in there. So it's got a really long spindle that goes through this hole and into the jewel on the base plate, and that's what we're going to put in next. Now this wheel, the 3rd wheel, has a very short spindle on the top and a very long spindle on the bottom, and the long one is the one that goes into the hole here. And I need to look at that under my loop to make sure I get it lined up with the jewel well before we put in the 4th wheel. Now I've got the 4th wheel in. Now it's time to put on the train bridge. That's going to be kind of hard because the escape wheel has an extremely long spindle, and that makes it real wobbly, so it's going to be hard to get that all lined up. So I'm going to have to do that looking at it through a loop. Hopefully it won't be too difficult to do. The train bridge is in place. It was easier to get on than I thought it was going to be. The only one that really gave me any trouble was the one for the escape wheel because it had such a long spindle. It was not wanting to line up. I ended up having to reach in with my tweezers in there and kind of shift it around a little bit until it fell into the jewel. It's held on by 3 screws. I've got those in here. There's one here, here, and here. And then the next thing we need to do is install some cap jewels. This movement has a cap jewel on the top right here for the escape wheel. And there's also a bottom cap jewel for the escape wheel. And there's another bottom cap jewel for the 3rd wheel. I'm not sure why the 3rd wheel has a cap jewel for its lower bearing, but not its upper bearing, because that's normally the 3rd wheel will have such an elaborate system of jeweling, but that's the way they've done it. So we need to install those next. I just realized I put something in together in the wrong order. I need to take the train bridge back off because the ratchet wheel needs to go underneath the third wheel, so I'm going to have to do that first before we do anything else. Okay, I've taken the train bridge off and I've taken out the fourth wheel and the third wheel to get them out of the way so I can put in the ratchet wheel. Before I could put the ratchet wheel in, though, I also had to install the click spring right here. And it has one end that goes in that little groove there, and then it goes around here and sticks into the area where the click's going to go. So then the ratchet wheel will go on top of that. The ratchet wheel is installed now. It's installed over the click spring. I've installed the crown wheel too. Now when you put the crown wheel on, remember that the screw for the crown wheel is a left-handed screw. So to tighten it, you turn it counterclockwise, which is the opposite of the norm. If you try to tighten it by turning it clockwise like you normally would, it won't tighten. The next thing we need to do is put the train bridge and the third wheel and fourth wheel back in place. So let's go ahead and do that. Now it's back together properly. The train bridge actually went on quite a bit easier this time than it did the first time. So I was lucky in that regard. I do need to put the click in up here, and then we'll be all done with this part of it. And then I need to put on those cap jewels that I mentioned earlier. Actually, I think I'll do the click later. I'm going to go ahead and do the cap jewels because I have one cap jewel here ready to go. And I've got it laying there on a piece of watchmaker's tissue. And I have it laying with the flat side up because this jewel is curved on one side and flat on the other. And the flat side is the side that will contact the end of the spindle. We need to put a drop of oil on this, and because this is the one for the escape wheel, I'm going to put a drop of Mobius 9010, the light oil, and then I'm going to pick it up and turn it upside down and drop it onto the movement, and where it goes is right there, and it's going to go upside down on that so that the side that's been oiled goes down on top of the other jewel that's set into the train bridge, and some of that oil will then seep into the hole in the one that's in the train bridge too, so that both jewels are lubricated. And we'll do the same thing for the two cap jewels that are on the bottom of the movement after I install this one. I've got that upper cap jewel installed for the escape wheel now. Next we need to turn it over and install the two lower cap jewels on the dial side of the movement. Those are for the escape wheel and the third wheel. Here's where these two jewels go on the bottom of the movement. One is here and one's here. One of them, this one here, actually the jewel looks like it's just a little bit smaller than this jewel. And the cap jewels are the same. One of the cap jewels looks like it's slightly bigger, so I need to make sure I put the right cap jewel on the right main plate jewel. One of these is for the escape wheel, and one of them is for the third wheel. So I'm going to do the same thing with these as I did with the cap jewel that we did on the top. I'm going to put a drop of Mobius 9010 on each one of them, and then I'm going to flip them over so that the flat side that I lubricated goes down onto the movement. The lower cap jewels are installed now. The next thing we need to do is install the Incabloc jewels. And there's one on the bottom of the movement, and there's one that's on the balance cock. And those are the jewels for the balance wheel, the upper and lower jewels for the balance wheel. And those are what we're going to work on next. Here are our Incabloc balance jewels. This part here is the main jewel that sits down inside the movement. And the spindle of the balance goes through that, and then it touches the cap jewel, which will sit on top of this. And I have these upside down right now. And the reason I have them like that is because I'm going to put a little drop of Mobius 9010 oil on each of the two cap jewels. And I've got them with the flat side facing up now because the flat side is what you lubricate. And then after I lubricate them, I will pick up the regular jewel housing and set it on top of the cap jewel. And the oil on the cap jewel will cause them to stick together. And then I can pick it up and flip it over and drop it into the movement. And there's two of them here. One's for the top and one's for the bottom. And actually they're not the same as each other. One is slightly larger than the other. The small one goes in the hole on the bottom of the main plate of the movement. And the large one goes in the balance cock. So we need to make sure that we keep track of them as far as their size so that they go in the right place. Got the bottom one in now. I'm going to go ahead and install the balance cock and balance wheel, and then I'll put the upper one into the balance cock after it's been attached to the movement. I think it'll be easier than trying to stick it in there before putting it on the movement. So I'm going to go ahead and flip the movement over and install the balance cock, and then we'll take care of that other jewel. Finally got the top jewel in. That one was a real pain to get in because I had trouble getting the cap jewel onto it and getting it to stick onto it, but I finally got it in there and dropped it in correctly, and I've got the spring closed on it, the balance wheel swinging freely, everything's good. I got to put the click on the balance bridge, and then we can wind it up and see if it functions. Well, I've got it wound up, and look at that, it's running beautifully. The balance wheel is running nice and fast, the gears are turning, everything's working as it should. I do have a couple things I need to do before I let this run too long. I still haven't finished lubricating the train wheels. I need to put a little drop of Mobius 9010 on the upper jewel here for the fourth wheel, and on the jewel for the third wheel as well. This one here has already been oiled because it's got that cap jewel on it. On the bottom of the movement, there's another jewel that needs to be oiled as well. There's the lower jewel for the pallet fork. I also need to oil, and I'm going to put a drop of Mobius 9010 on that. That's our thin oil that we use. This thing here that I'm holding is called an oiler. This is what we use for oiling the movement. It's basically a thin wire set in a plastic handle, and it's got a little flat end on it that captures the oil when you dip it into the oil pot. And they make these in different sizes so that you can choose how much of a spot of oil you want to drop onto a part of the movement. This is the thinnest one that I have, which is what I use for these little jewels on wristwatches because they don't take very much oil at all. You just need a teeny little drop. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and finish the lubrication on it, and then in the next video I will finish putting together the keyless works and the motion works, putting the hands in the dial on and putting it in the case. And I'm also going to put a new crystal on it because if you remember from the earlier videos, the crystal is very cloudy on this. So I've ordered a new acrylic crystal that should be here tomorrow. And when that arrives, I'll put that on and I'll show you the process for changing the acrylic crystal as well. Just for the fun of it, I decided to go ahead and stick the movement on the time grapher. I wanted to see what kind of results we're getting after I finish the service. Now that I haven't done any regulation or anything on it, this is just what we're going to get after we cleaned it and oiled it and put it back together and everything. So I still need to adjust it, but the results I got were pretty good here. So here it is, and this is with no regulation done. This is just after putting it back together. The rate's running at plus 42 seconds a day, so it's running too fast, but that's not too bad. We can fix that easily. Amplitude's 244 degrees of amplitude. That's really good because I don't have it fully wound up. I only wound it up about halfway just to get it started. If it were fully wound, I think we would probably be around 280 or so degrees of amplitude. And that's really good for an old movement like this. Beat error is just 0.2 milliseconds. That is awesome. Especially since this is a watch that's hard to correct the beat error on anyway. This one doesn't have the hairspring stud on a movable lever like a modern watch. So if I wanted to correct the beat error on this, I would have to take the balance wheel off the movement and adjust the hairspring collet on the balance staff. And that's something I've never done before. And I'm going to have to do that eventually because I've got another old watch that I worked on that needs the beat error corrected and has that same sort of system. So that's something I'm going to need to learn to do in the future. But this one right here, I'm not going to do any correction on the beat error. 0.2 milliseconds, that's awesome. That's a good result. If I change the regulation to cancel out that 40 seconds per day error in the rate, I'm sure I can get this down to less than 5 seconds a day and we'll have a really awesome watch then.